What happens when a man believes his wealth makes him untouchable, when he thinks the darkness of the ocean can erase his crimes, and when he assumes the family he married into is too weak to fight back. Tonight, on Roots of Revenge, you're about to hear a story so disturbing, so emotionally devastating, that it left an entire studio frozen in silence when it was finally told. Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to Roots of Revenge, like this video, and leave a comment, because what you're about to witness is not just a story of betrayal. It's the beginning of a reckoning that no amount of money could stop. The studio lights glow softly, but the atmosphere is heavy, tense, almost suffocating. The man sitting in the center chair doesn't look like someone chasing attention. His shoulders are stiff, his hands locked together as if holding himself in place, and his breathing is slow and controlled, like one wrong word could shatter him. Across from him, the host leans forward, voice unusually calm. "You said this was the hardest thing you've ever had to talk about," the host says. "Why tell it now?" The man doesn't answer right away. His eyes drop to the floor, jaw tightening, and when he finally looks up, the pain in his expression is unmistakable. "Because my daughter almost died," he says quietly. The audience reacts instantly, gasps, whispers, shock rippling through the room. "She was pregnant," he continues, his voice trembling despite his effort to stay composed. 7 months, and she trusted him. The host swallows. "Your son-in-law." The man nods once. The man the public sees as charming, successful, generous, the man who smiles for cameras and throws parties on yachts, that man. His hands unclench now, shaking slightly. "He threw my daughter off his yacht at midnight." The room goes silent. Not the polite silence of television, but the kind that presses against your chest. Someone whispers, "No way." The host looks stunned. "You're saying I'm saying," the man cuts in softly, "that my pregnant daughter was pushed into open water because she said something he didn't like." The audience murmurs in disbelief. Phones are already rising, recording, sharing. "What did she say?" the host asks. The man exhales sharply. "She told him she was leaving. She told him she was done being afraid." His voice cracks. He laughed. "Told her she'd never survive without him. Told her no one would believe her." Tears fill his eyes. Then he shoved her. A woman in the audience covers her mouth. Another shakes her head. "She didn't scream," the man says. "She told me later she was too shocked. The water was freezing. The lights disappeared. And all she could think was, 'I have to protect my baby.'" The host wipes their hands nervously. "How did she survive?" The man looks up slowly, and something changes in his expression. Because someone he didn't know existed was already watching. The audience leans forward. "Your brother?" the host asks. He nods. "My brother doesn't attend parties, he doesn't post online, he doesn't give interviews." A pause. "But he understands men like my son-in-law." The tension tightens. "He was nearby," the man continues, "tracking the yacht, watching behavior, waiting." Gasps fill the room. "He saw the argument. He saw my daughter fall." His voice drops to a whisper. "And he jumped in after her." The audience reacts loudly now. "He pulled her out," the man says. "Barely conscious, hypothermic, still holding her stomach." Tears fall freely now. "While she was rushed to a private hospital, my brother was already making phone calls." The host asks carefully, "To the police?" The man shakes his head. "To people who don't get intimidated by money." A murmur spreads through the crowd. "My son-in-law thought the ocean erased everything," the man continues. "He thought his wealth made him untouchable. He thought no one would challenge him." He looks directly into the camera. "He didn't know my brother." The host sits back, stunned. "Does he know now?" The man's gaze hardens. "He's about to." The audience erupts in shock and whispers. Somewhere off camera, a producer mutters, "Oh my God." The man exhales slowly, as if releasing years of fear. "This isn't about revenge," he says quietly. "This is about accountability, about making sure a man who tried to erase his own child learns that power doesn't belong to the cruel. It belongs to those who are prepared." The red camera light pulses. Social media is already exploding, and everyone watching knows one thing for certain. This story has only just begun. The host lets the silence breathe, the kind of pause that feels intentional, heavy, almost respectful, before finally leaning forward again. "When your brother pulled her from the water," the host asks carefully, "what happened next?" The man exhales through his nose as if bracing himself against a memory that still burns. "Chaos," he says. "Controlled chaos." He explains how the yacht never stopped moving, how music kept playing, how laughter carried across the deck while his daughter fought for her life in the dark water below. The audience reacts with audible anger now, whispers turning sharp, judgmental. "My brother wrapped her in his jacket," the man continues, voice low, deliberate. "He kept talking to her, telling her not to sleep, not to let go. She kept repeating one thing over and over: 'Don't let him find us.'" A murmur ripples through the studio. "She was terrified," he says. "Not of the water, of him." The host shakes their head slowly. "And your son-in-law, noticed nothing?" The man's lips tighten. He noticed. He just didn't care. A sharp intake of breath moves through the crowd. "He went back to his guests, ordered champagne, told everyone my daughter had too much to drink and needed rest." Boos erupt from the audience, raw and unfiltered. The host raises a hand, but even they look visibly shaken. "That night," the man continues, "my brother activated something we hoped we'd never need." He pauses, choosing his words. "A contingency." The audience leans in. "You see," he says, "my brother spent years building quiet relationships. Investigators, maritime authorities, financial analysts, people who know how to follow trails that money tries to hide." The host's eyes widen. "So this wasn't just emotional? It was strategic." The man nods once. "We didn't scream. We didn't accuse. We documented." He describes how hospital records were sealed, how doctors photographed bruises on his daughter's arms, fingerprints that didn't belong to waves or accidents. "She didn't want to testify at first," he admits, voice softening. "She was scared. She still loved the man she thought he was." The audience reacts sadly now, a collective ache. "He called her," the man says, "left voicemails, apologetic at first, then angry, then threatening." The host asks, "You have those messages?" The man looks up, eyes steady. "Every single one." A gasp. "Meanwhile," he continues, "my brother was already 2 steps ahead. He pulled shipping logs, security footage from nearby vessels, crude testimonies that were never meant to see daylight." The tension thickens. "Crew members talk," the man says, "especially when they realize loyalty doesn't pay legal fees." A few audience members nod knowingly. "One deckhand came forward," he continues, "said he saw the argument, saw my son-in-law shove her, was told to forget it ever happened." The host leans back slowly. "So the image he sold the world was already cracking," the man finishes, "but the public didn't know yet." He explains how his son-in-law continued posting online, luxury trips, charity galas, smiling beside powerful people. "He thought silence meant safety," the man says. "He thought we were afraid." The audience murmurs angrily. "But silence was strategy." The host repeats it softly. "Silence was strategy." The man nods. While he was celebrating, subpoenas were being drafted. Financial records were being traced. Shell companies started unraveling. The audience's reaction shifts now, from shock to anticipation. And then, the host asks, the moment he realized? A slow, almost grim smile crosses the man's face. It came when his lawyers stopped returning calls. Laughter breaks out, dark and satisfied. When his bank froze a private account he didn't think anyone knew about. When sponsors quietly postponed meetings. The man's voice lowers. He called me, for the first time. The studio goes dead silent. What did he say? The host asks. He asked if this was about the yacht, the man replies. I said no. A pause. I said it was about the truth. The audience erupts in applause, sharp and loud. He begged, the man continues, tried to negotiate, tried to remind me of his influence. His eyes harden. I reminded him he threw a pregnant woman into the ocean. The crowd gasps again. That's when he realized, the man says quietly, that this wasn't going away. The host nods slowly. And your daughter? The man's voice softens. She survived. The baby survived. Applause bursts out, emotional, some people standing. But survival isn't the same as healing, he adds. And justice isn't finished. The red camera light blinks steadily as the weight of what's coming settles in. Somewhere outside the studio, media outlets are already circling, unaware of how much deeper this story goes. And everyone watching can feel it, the calm before something irreversible. The host waits for the applause to fade, but the energy in the room doesn't settle. It sharpens. There's a different feeling now, no longer just shock or sympathy, but anticipation, the sense that something larger is unfolding beneath the surface. When the pressure started closing in, the host asks quietly, "Did he change?" The man lets out a short, humorless laugh. "Desperation changes people faster than guilt ever could." The audience murmurs in agreement. "He stopped pretending," the man continues. "The charm disappeared. The apologies vanished. What replaced them was rage." He describes late-night calls his daughter received from unknown numbers, messages that shifted from pleading to threatening in minutes. He told her she'd ruin herself, told her no one would believe a hysterical pregnant woman, told her accidents happen at sea all the time. The audience reacts angrily now, some voices rising. But the thing about threats, the man says, is that they're confessions wrapped in fear. The host nods slowly. Your brother kept pushing? Relentlessly, he replies. He uncovered patterns, other women, other silenced incidents, settlements disguised as mutual separations. Gasps ripple through the crowd. One woman flew in secretly, he continues, sat across from my daughter, held her hand, and told her, he did the same thing to me, just not on a yacht. A woman in the audience whispers, "Oh my God." That was the moment my daughter stopped blaming herself, the man says, voice thick with emotion. That was the moment she chose to fight. The host leans forward. And the case? The man's expression darkens. That's when it stopped being just personal. Authorities reopened maritime logs. Financial regulators flagged irregularities. Suddenly, his name wasn't just trending, it was toxic. The audience hums with tension. He tried to control the narrative, the man says, released a statement, called it a misunderstanding, said the interview tonight was emotionally motivated fiction. Laughter breaks out, bitter and sharp. But lies collapse when they're layered too high, he continues. Crew members testified, medical reports surfaced, audio recordings leaked. The host raises an eyebrow. Audio? The man nods. His voice, angry, clear, saying, "No one would dare cross me." The audience erupts, some clapping, some stunned into silence. Sponsors vanished overnight, the man says. Friends distanced themselves. Invitations stopped coming. He pauses. That's when he showed up at my door. A collective gasp. Unannounced, he continues. No cameras, no lawyers, just panic. The host's voice is barely above a whisper. What did he want? The man meets the host's eyes. Control, forgiveness, silence. The audience scoffs. He told me we were family, the man says flatly. I told him family doesn't throw family into the ocean. Applause explodes, louder than before. He offered money, the man continues. More than I've ever seen. Told me to think about the child. His jaw tightens. I told him the child is exactly why this ends now. The host exhales slowly. And your brother? Was already finalizing what comes next, the man replies, because justice doesn't just punish, it exposes. The audience leans forward, sensing the climax approaching. Court filings were scheduled. Investigative journalists were briefed. Everything timed. He looks around the studio. Including tonight. The realization hits the crowd like a wave. This interview, the host says, stunned, is part of it. The man nods. Transparency is power. The red light glows brighter somehow. He's watching, the man adds quietly, and for the first time, he understands what it feels like to be powerless. The audience sits frozen, aware they're witnessing the turning point of a story that's about to erupt far beyond this room. The studio is silent for a moment after the last words land, the kind of silence that presses against the walls and makes every breath feel loud. Then the audience begins to react, not all at once, but in waves. A sharp inhale here, a whispered, wow, there. Someone in the back shakes their head slowly, like their mind is struggling to catch up with what their ears just heard. Phones rise instinctively, screens glowing as clips are recorded, messages typed, stories shared in real time. Outside this room, the world is already waking up to what's happening. Social media explodes first, short clips of the interview spreading like wildfire, captions filled with disbelief, anger, and praise. Hashtags form within minutes, his name paired with words like midnight yacht, pregnant, justice, and exposed. The host leans back in their chair, eyes wide, voice low. I've done this a long time, they say slowly, and I've never felt a shift like this while it was happening. The man nods, his face calm now, almost relieved. Because the truth doesn't rush, he replies. It waits until it can't be ignored. The audience begins to clap, not polite applause, but something deeper, emotional, rising until people are on their feet. Some are wiping tears, others look furious, a few just stare, stunned. The cameras pan across their faces, capturing a collective reckoning. Within hours, major outlets pick up the story. Headlines shift from vague curiosity to direct confrontation. Former allies release carefully worded statements, distancing themselves. Brands quietly remove images, scrub websites, cancel partnerships without explanation. Analysts appear on late-night panels, dissecting every detail, every pause, every choice of words from the interview. This isn't just a scandal, one commentator says on a split screen somewhere. This is systemic. This is exposure. Back in the studio, the host clears their throat. Have you heard from him since this aired? The man's lips press into a thin line. No, he says, and that tells me everything. He explains how legal filings hit within days, how multiple investigations converge, how witnesses who stayed silent for years suddenly feel safe enough to speak. Power protects itself, he says, until it can't. The audience murmurs in agreement. My daughter watched this interview, he continues, voice softening. She held her child in her arms. A hush falls over the room. She told me it was the first night she slept without fear. Tears spill openly now, from the audience, from the host, from the man himself. That's the aftermath people don't talk about, he says. Not the headlines, not the fallout, the quiet moments where survivors finally breathe. The host nods, visibly emotional. And your brother? He stepped back into the shadows. The man replies. He never wanted recognition. He wanted results. The audience applauds again, slower this time, reverent. The cameras cut to the crowd one last time. Journalists already drafting follow-ups, influencers whispering, strangers bonded by the weight of what they've witnessed. The red light on the main camera pulses steadily, like a heartbeat. "Tonight," the host says, turning to the lens, "you didn't just hear a story. You witnessed the consequences of arrogance, cruelty, and underestimating the strength of family." The man leans forward slightly, eyes locked on the camera now. "If you're watching this and you've ever been told you're powerless," he says, "remember this. The truth has a long memory, and it always surfaces." The applause swells one final time as the lights begin to dim. Outside the studio, the story keeps growing, shared, debated, argued over, analyzed. Somewhere, a man who once believed himself untouchable watches his empire crack piece by piece. And somewhere else, a woman who was almost erased holds her child and knows she was never alone. Before the screen fades to black, the host's voice returns, steady and direct. "Now it's your turn. What do you think? Was justice inevitable, or was it carefully earned? Share your thoughts in the comments. We're reading them. And if you want more stories that uncover the hidden roots of betrayal, power, and revenge, make sure you subscribe to Roots of Revenge. Because some stories don't end when the cameras stop. They begin.